Thank you, Bill. I think I see 98 right now, so I think we can get started. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to what is not our usual PD&A monthly board meeting. I want to thank everyone for being here. Typically, in the old days, we used to go around the room and introduce everybody in the room. A little bit difficult to do these days. But I do want to tell you who our board members are. So I'm just going to list them. So when you see us, you know who they are. So alphabetically, our board members in the room are Bill Bagnall, our secretary, Christy Barrows, board member, Patricia Cliff, board member, Judy Duncan, board member and chair of Livability and Safety Committee, David Dysert, co-chair of Planning and Transportation Committee, Reza Farhoudi, board member, co-chair of Planning and Transportation, Julie Gustafson, board member, Sarah Hober, board member, John Hollister, board member, Betty Lou Koffel, board member, Tom Lavoie. Tom, great to see you. Been a while. Christian Maynard Phillip, who actually is not here tonight. She's out of town. She is our treasurer. I'm Stan Penkin. I'm president of PD&A. Jerry Pike, who cannot join us tonight, board member. Angela Shamborska, Haji Sheen, Mary Sipe, Glenn Traeger, John Warner, chair of our Emergency Preparation Committee, and Linda Witt. So again, thank you all for being here. There are so many of us here tonight, residents and businesses, because we have common concerns about safety in our streets and are feeling frustration, anger, and fear. Because of this serious concern, we are dispensing with our normal agenda tonight to focus on the issue at hand and to give it all the time it deserves. Tonight is an informational meeting to better understand what happened on February 27th, starting in Fields Park, when the police were aware of the expected direct action, but Bill, are we still there? Because the screen.
Yes.
We're still there. Okay. The event that happened on February 27th, starting in Fields Park, when the police were aware of the expected direct action, but we nevertheless experienced mayhem and destructive acts. And what we can expect to ensure the safety of the neighborhood for what is again feared to happen tomorrow night at Jamison Park and potentially future incidents elsewhere across the city. I want to frame some larger questions with additional questions to follow after we hear from our guests. First, the community wants to feel confident that proactive strategies and tactics are being employed to prevent and control illegal and destructive gatherings, and if the Police Bureau has adequate resources to protect our communities. If not, are other resources being sought, such as Sheriff's Office, State Police, National Guard, FBI, and other law enforcement agencies? Now, I understand that you probably can't answer that question very directly for obvious reasons, but we want to have some sense of confidence in terms of the resources that will be available to protect us. Secondly, people want to better understand the status of arrests during such incidents and the role of the district attorney's office with regard to this type of destructive criminal behavior. Lastly, the community seeks greater communication and debriefs from the Police Bureau and the city with regard to planned events to answer questions, minimize fear and anxiety, and to provide a transparent and open dialogue so the community is adequately informed and has a better idea of what it might expect and what precautions to take to stay safe. With that, I want to welcome, and I can't see everybody's here, but I want to welcome Deputy Chief Chris Davis from the Police Bureau, Lieutenant Jake Jensen, who typically attends our monthly meetings, and Robert King, Public Safety Advisor to Mayor Wheeler, And I'm not sure who else might be here from the Police Bureau, but if they are, I welcome you as well. So we welcome you to share your thoughts and comments. Bill will take questions and share them after we hear your thoughts. And we will take as long as we need so that everyone can ask their questions and get answers. So with that, I don't know who wants to take it away. Is it you, Chief Davis?
Sure, thanks, Stan, and good evening, everyone. It's thank you for having me. I will keep any introductory remarks pretty short, just because I know people have a lot of questions, and I want to leave plenty of time to hear from you, and try to answer your questions as best I can. I know that your neighborhood has been one of the ones targeted for an inordinate amount of criminal activity related to civil unrest in the city over the last year. And, I know we've had an incident recently where it once again got out of hand. I will tell you that one of the things that we've learned out of that incident, and one of the things that I'm hoping we can solve for, is a better way to reach the community, because we had a conversation in the run up to that event about, do we put something out about this group that we're expecting it? We have some contacts that we can put that out to, but we clearly don't have enough to reach the broader community audience without doing a media release. And we had to make a really difficult decision about whether, do we put out a media release and then potentially add fuel to the fire. I can talk a little bit about the planning for these events, because that came into play in this situation. We plan our response when we see one of these events coming based upon whatever intelligence information we're able to get. And I won't obviously go into a whole lot of detail about how we get that information, because I don't want to compromise any of those sources. But that can be very challenging, especially with some of these more organized groups that have engaged in criminal activity over the last year, like what we saw the other night. So the information that we had in the run up to the event was that the group was going to be fairly small. And if we can keep the group of people to a small group, if they're motivated to go out and break windows or set fires or any other criminal activity, it's a lot easier for us. It gives us more options to deal with it. Once one of these groups gets to 100 people or more, then it becomes a different task for us, and it becomes a lot more resource intensive for us to deal with one of these groups. We are expecting an event for tomorrow night from similar to what we've seen before. We're trying to get, I think Craig Dobson is your precinct commander at Central Precinct, and he is also in charge of our public order policing program. And I think he just can't get into the Zoom because it's at capacity. So we're hoping he's going to find a way to get in here, because he can talk a lot more about the specific plan. I know Lieutenant Jensen is here as well and may be able to speak more to the specific plan for tomorrow. But what I can tell you is we have shifted our strategy for dealing with these events multiple times now over the last almost year that we've been in this situation, to try to meet the reality that we're facing. This group has, and its activities have evolved over that time, and so we've had to evolve with them. Right now, we are making a much stronger focus on trying to arrest people engaged in criminal activity at these events. We know that our district attorney has made a decision that the lower level criminal offenses that we used to use at events to keep them from getting out of hand, like your disorderly conduct for blocking a street, or it's interfering with a police officer, which is where the police tell you to get out of the street and then you don't do it. Those kind of things are just, they're not charging those cases all by themselves without more serious charges. And, some of the reasons that the DA has cited, to be fair, make sense because he's got limited resources just like I do. And so he has to be really smart about how he spends those resources. And those will be very resource intense prosecutions for him if he prosecutes those, because a lot of these more organized activist groups like this will intentionally take every single one of those small charges to trial to just try and burn through the DA's resources. And so that's one of the reasons why they made that decision. And, it just is what it is. It's the reality that we have to live with. And so we've shifted to focusing on the more serious crimes and the ones that the DA has indicated that he will prosecute. If somebody does thousands of dollars of damage breaking windows and we arrest them, DA Schmidt has assured us that he will prosecute them. And it's on us to make sure we provide him with sufficient evidence and a good, solid prosecutable case. And so we're trying to focus more on those and get the most for our efforts. The other thing that does is we've had to make some adjustments to our program, but if you can take that person out of that group, a lot of times it's one person or a small number of people in that larger group who do an inordinate amount of the damage. And so if you can grab one of them for some really major property crimes out of that group, then it starts to take the energy out of that group. And that's what we saw on January 20th. That worked really well. And so that's the shift in our strategy. And then the other thing, like I said, that I would like to solve for is I don't know if it's an email list or some better way to communicate with as many people in the neighborhood as we can, short of just a city and universe-wide press release that then can embolden these groups sometimes and make them feel like they're getting some attention. As far as, this is the last point that I'll make, and then I'll be quiet and try to answer any questions that you have. But as far as resources and mutual aid, you brought those things up. No organization outside of some really big police agencies like New York or maybe Los Angeles, LA County, Chicago ever has the resources to handle one of these events all by itself. And we are not unique in that regard. We are certainly one of the leanest major city police departments in the country. And mutual aid has, and this has been public, so I'm not sharing anything that isn't in the public domain, but we have had some challenges with mutual aid because we've lost some of our mutual aid partners in neighboring counties, but we do still, when we need it, have really good support that we appreciate a lot from the Oregon State Police and from the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office. Now we have to try not to overuse that because the tension for the state police is that they're a pretty lean agency too, and they've got a really big area to be in, and there were times last summer where we took the police protection from a lot of parts of rural Oregon to police some of these events. And so there's a balance there, and it's a really big challenge, but we try to manage it the best that we can.
If I can just jump in here for a moment, just a bit of housekeeping. We are maxed out. We have learned tonight our coalition account has a limit of 100 people. This is a sold out concert, and I am keeping a space. If Jake, if you can reach out to your officer commander to try to log in, I've got spot open for him. So if anyone can text him or let him know, that would be great. I
tried twice already and it keeps kicking me off, saying it's at capacity.
So you might have heard that.
We got him on speakerphone.
And I have Commander Dobson on speakerphone here.
Okay.
Low tech workaround.
That's right.
Okay, well, Chris, thank you very much. I know we have a bunch of questions. Jake, is there anything you want to add to that, as you're our contact on a regular basis? And I will also ask Robert King if he wants to chime in on anything from the perspective of the mayor's office.
You know, the only thing I'll add is that every time we have one of these events, we take a hard look at our preparation, at our strategy going into it, at how we executed against that strategy, and any lessons we can learn going forward. And we did that the night of and in the days after the event up in the Pearl on the 27th. And so we've used the lessons that we learned there to modify our strategy and tactics for this event that we expect to happen tomorrow night. That's really the only thing I have to add.
One thing I want to say after this meeting, Chris, you mentioned how you might be able to better communicate to the neighborhood without mass media and drawing additional attention. That's something I would like to see us talk about outside of this meeting to see how we can make something like that happen. And I will say, in the past, communications have not been that great to the community, but there was definitely an improvement last week where I think Chief Lavelle sent out a message to the community, but I don't know who gets to see those. We also, as an association, we put out messaging. We did before the Fields Park event. But again, if somebody is not signed up as a PD&A member, they're not going to see that unless they happen to go on Facebook or whatever. So communication is really difficult, but I think it's something we really have to tackle to see that everybody can understand what's going on.
Yeah, agreed. And I'll be happy to have that conversation with you offline about how we can solve that problem.
Thank you. Robert King, I don't want to put you on the spot. I don't even see you at the moment, but I know you're there somewhere. Here you are. Is there anything you want to add from the mayor's office perspective, which of course, as we all know, the mayor is the police commissioner?
Thank you, Stan. Yes, of course, mayor is very aware, concerned about what happened last week and its impact on the Pearl. I know he spent a considerable amount of time on the phone following. Just wanted to give you an update of what we've done and what we're planning to do. Many of you know that Sam Adams has joined our team. Bobby Lee is our new chief of staff, formerly from Prosper and works now in Seattle and has arrived here. So we've got some new leadership on the team, and welcome Sam back to the mix. And I'm mentioning that because Mayor asked the staff to reach out to the DA, to the judges, to the sheriff's office and U.S. attorney in light of this issue of this particular group that is fairly regularly engaging in this criminal action. Last week, I know you probably all saw DA Schmidt's willing statement where he has committed to prosecuting these cases and even the lower level arrests, like say disorderly conduct, perhaps where there isn't even property damage, but he has spoken out against it and committed to working with the police bureau, the mayor's office and others to ensure people are held accountable. There is because of COVID, there's been a presiding judge's order that has impacted what charges can be booked into the jail. But in talking with the presiding judge and with the sheriff, they were willing to include some lesser offenses so that if arrests are made, those people too could face being booked in the jail. We're in close contact and communication with U.S. Attorney's Office, have been around this group in particular. And by and large, the group are sort of self-described anarchists who come to these events, regularly advertising them as direct action, ask for no streamers, meaning no live streamers, so that their criminal conduct can't be detected or recorded. And so U.S. Attorney's Office is also aware and involved. Mayor will meet this next week with the acting United States Attorney to talk more about this group and about potential assistance from U.S. Attorney's Office and other federal entities to hold individuals involved in this conduct accountable. We did intentionally this last week, prior to the event, make a concerted effort to engage in more and better communication. As the chief indicated, We had originally anticipated a smaller group, and our concern around communicating the information publicly and widely is that it's an advertisement and it attracts more people. And that did happen this last week, which did have some amount of impact on overall the events of the evening. But we were, I know the chief put out a press release indicating he had brought on additional resources. The chief, Stan, as you indicated, had put out that from the desk of the chief, sharing information with people. And as I mentioned earlier, the DA also put out more communication. So coming into the weekend, we, of course, as the chief has indicated, have staffed up. We're aware of the event that's been advertised for tomorrow. There are a number of other events that we also are aware of in, say, the coming week or two. So we are focusing on ensuring we have staff necessary to conduct those operations, communicate more and better with people in the community, and want to work with you, Stan, and this group and partner in ways in which we can work better together. We talked about some of the things that we could do. So those are just a few things. We also have implemented a pre-event and post-event briefing for the mayor, and working, diligently as a team to do everything we can in the lead up to these events, and then ensure that we are able to make the mayor's given, as the chief indicated, mayor's given very explicit and clear direction when and if there is an occasion for arrest, even lower level charges, that his expectation is when arrests can be made, they are made and will be made. I know that the last week that there were about 6 or 7 shootings that occurred in the city, as well as a fatal crash, and staffing, frankly, for the group, I'll tell all of you, does play a role. That we're seeing a record number of shootings and homicides in the city. Just today, you'll see in the news that mayor is taking a proposal to city council for $2 million to increase the Bureau's capacity, the Office of Violence Prevention's capacity, and Parks Bureau's capacity to be able to prevent and intervene related to gun violence in particular. So staffing definitely has played a role since July. There have been many retirements and also many resignations. And one thing I would say to the group, I think it will be more important for your voice to be heard in this coming budget discussion than ever before. With COVID and the economic impacts of it, all city bureaus will be taking a cut. And at this point, the mayor is proposing the Bureau take a certain cut, but he also is recommending an add back package. And the add back package would allow the Police Bureau to begin to hire, because right now, many people have left. There is no hiring that is occurring whatsoever. And we need to begin to hire now, because it takes 18 months to 2 years to get a new recruit officer recruited, hired, and trained and deployed into our streets. And so staffing levels and budget is very much a part of, in the longer term, the Police Bureau and the city's ability to be able to respond effectively to these events. So I just would encourage you as an action item on that front, any and all involvement and engagement you can have with the council around that issue, I think would be very valuable. But in the meantime, we're committed to pulling in other resources as needed to address these ongoing demonstrations. So I know news outlets are on the call, and so I'm not wanting to share too much more in the weeds or in the granularity of the specifics, but Stan wanted to provide that information to the group on behalf of the mayor tonight.
Robert, or this directed to Chris or Jake, one concern I think we have, people are not quite sure what to do when these events occur and people are rampaging through the streets. We've heard talk of people lining the streets, surrounding their buildings. As we know, in the last incident, people were yelling down from their balconies, which all tended to incite the demonstrators more. So one thing I think our population needs, and I'm not just saying here, but across the entire city, what sorts of things should we be doing to protect our safety? That's information we really need to have. And there's lots of different opinions about that. And the other thing I just wanted to ask, I've heard some talk that the shootings that occurred that weekend, some of it might have been caused by these groups as distractions for our police resources. And I'm also wondering, it seems to me there are many shootings every weekend. And that would not be such a surprise that the police bureau, unless it doesn't have the resources, should be prepared to handle both. So I don't think those shootings come as a surprise on the weekends. And maybe I'm wrong about that, but I just wanted to put that question out there.
I think I can speak to those, and then maybe Commander Dobson too, as to the number of shootings that we had going on in the event the other day. And I'll go in reverse order. So yes, we do know that we can reasonably expect some amount of gun violence, unfortunately, pretty much any time of the day or night these days. And it has been a tremendous strain on our resources because depending on the circumstances, any one of those shooting calls might take a dozen or more police officers to handle, depending on if anyone is hit by gunfire. If it's a homicide case with the kind of crime scene and investigative resources that go into those, then it's a huge amount of resources it takes for a pretty long period, a matter of hours to process those scenes. Even some of the shootings where no one is hit, there are so many shell casings to photograph and process and collect that's just a really time-consuming task for a lot of people. And the reality is that it is incredibly challenging with the resources that we have to manage one or more shooting scenes in the city at the same time as an event like this. We have, I want to say, in the neighborhood of like 840 sworn police members right now. And that includes me and Commander Dobson, all the way down to our police officers. And then, that might seem like a lot until you realize, number one, how big the city of Portland has gotten. And just the fact that we've got 3 different patrol precincts running 24/7 operations, 7 days a week, staffing those to those numbers, you burn through all those people very quickly. And so unfortunately, it is very difficult for us to manage multiple events like this at once within the resources we have. That's why you're seeing call response times going up to levels that are a problem for us too. So, but to your question about what can residents do, understand that 2 things I think that are important. One is I want to be really clear on the distinction between protests and what we're talking about here, this kind of civil unrest. We have over 300 protest events in an average year just in Central Precinct, the vast majority of which involve no public safety issues or crime of any kind. Protest is fine. That's not what we're talking about. With this group, this is a small group of people who are bent on destroying things and starting conflicts. And what they want is a conflict. And so my advice is don't give them a conflict. That's why you'll see us sometimes take a little bit of a hands-off approach, and then what we're seeing is they will escalate to the point where they force us to come react. And so now you're starting to see us intervene again at an earlier time. But for you, I would really recommend that you don't provide them with that conflict of, getting into a confrontation with them, because they've shown lots of times that they're willing to engage in that conflict with you if you make that available to them. So the best things that you can do for us is, provide us with good witness information later for crimes that happen. We have to piece together sometimes after the fact videos or witness accounts of crimes. And so, if you can provide us with information of things that you see happening, that's probably the best thing that you can do for us.
Can I
Give 'em
ask
the
a
moment.
question? Can I ask you a question on that? Because I've gotten several questions, variants of that. When you talk about providing you with information on these folks, can you elaborate on for us? I mean, do you video, photos? Can you tell us what's most helpful?
Video and photos are great because in this day and age, you know, when you talk about prosecution, prosecutors love to have video, and there's so many security cameras out there that it's very helpful. Hours and hours and hours of video footage, especially of nothing happening, is less helpful, obviously, because somebody has to review all of that. Or still photographs are good too. You know, a lot of you have the benefit of being up high, where, you know, you might be able to get pictures of criminal activity happening without anybody knowing. I mean, I don't know what kind of opportunities you have there if you're watching a crime happen. You know, that's how we solve a lot of crimes, is with video that people collect on their own, or photographs. So if you can help us by, you know, we need what we need to satisfy evidentiary requirements for court and that kind of thing. But if you can help, at least if you have something for us, point us to which section of video, so we're not, you know, because it does take a long time to review videos. And I think for this group, you know, one possibility would be Central Precinct would be a good gateway to give us those things. I'll leave that to Lieutenant Jensen about how we could receive those things in an organized way, so we're not just getting deluged with them and they all go to one place.
Thank you. I don't know how you want to do this, but Commander Dobson is available now. Would he like to speak, or?
Yeah, I guess that's what I would invite the group. Maybe if we can have him talk to us a little bit about that event more specifically, and then kind of the planning process. And he's a very humble guy, so I will say this for him by way of introduction. He is a nationally recognized expert in public order policing, and we're really lucky to have him. So he's a good resource for your questions.
Great.
So Chief and Lieutenant Jensen talked a little bit about it. Every event that comes up, we do a threat assessment on, and we evaluate what we're looking at, what the likelihood of seeing vandalism or any type of criminal activity. And so we'll rate those. For example, today we had 2 events that we looked at and judged that there was low probability that we were going to have any issues with. One went off without a hitch. The other one did have a little bit of a vandalism, and we were able to make an arrest on that one. For the event that we had a couple of weeks ago in the Pearl, we did a threat assessment. Our understanding of that was we were looking at a fairly small group. Based on that, we staffed according to what we thought we were going to see, recognizing that we have challenges not only with our budget, but also our staffing. And so, having worked most of the summer, what I'd like to point out, like the chief said, was many times during the summer when we poll to do, whether it's shootings or whether it's civil unrest, when we pull from there, we're pulling people from other parts of the city that then can't take 911 calls of any other type of crime. And so we're constantly balancing our need and how do we best deal with the issue with what we have. In the case of a couple of weekends ago, we had it set up with sufficient resources. What happened was we ended up having 7 shootings. There was a double homicide as well as 2 suicides that occurred during that period of time that we were dealing with this group of civil unrest. One of the questions was, do we believe that they're doing the shootings as well? Personally, for me, I don't believe that's the case. I think that's a different issue altogether. Based on what we understand of the civil unrest piece. And that's where my expertise comes in as opposed to the shooting side. But because of those shootings, and there were, again, 7 of them that occurred during that period of time, all of our resources that we were going to pull from the precincts were now having to deal with those shootings. And so we were limited to what resources we actually had for the event that we had down there. And so we did have more damage than we had hoped, we were hoping to be able to prevent.
I have a question.
So with all that said, what can we expect tomorrow night from the police perspective?
So again, we have evaluated what we have. We have staffed accordingly. We're bringing in extra people for tomorrow night's event. What we saw is today, we saw them hit the federal courthouse today and break a window. It looks like that they're going to have an action tonight that's been publicly posted. And so at this point, things are a little bit up in the air as to whether or not they're going to go back to the courthouse and focus on the courthouse, or they're going to actually maybe come to the Pearl and then move to the courthouse. It all kind of depends. We don't have that intel, but we are prepared if they do come into the Pearl to be able to deal with them in a little different manner than we had before.
Can I ask you a follow-up related to this? You had on the 27th event, February 27th, there were 15 to 20 bicycle officers on scene, which from my observation and other observations seemed to follow along, but didn't seem to necessarily achieve any stoppage to what these people were doing. Can you speak at all to that?
So, no.
Okay.
There was a purpose to them. There was a focus that they were working on, but I can't, yes, they did not address the breakage that was going on directly because they were focused on something else.
Okay.
So Bill, I want to suggest that I know there are a lot of questions out there. So I think maybe we can get to everybody's questions.
Yeah, that's what we're doing here. One of the questions that came up going back to the idea of photos and so on, people see that people get out, they park their cars, they get out, they take photos of them, of the license plate in the car and whatnot. Is that of any use to you folks?
That is, yes.
Okay. I think we should, for some clarity here, the question of people going down to, say, Jameson. What if 1,000 residents just go down to Jameson Park and hang out there tomorrow night? You know, talk, so on. You know, fill up the park with people. Would you advise that? Would you not advise that?
That is a great question. We live in a wonderful country that allows us the freedom to do a lot of different things. I would not tell you to do one thing or another. You have the right to gather together peacefully like anyone else. I can tell you, because I saw in the chat, you know, one of the questions was, well, why don't you show up at the park earlier and just disrupt it? One of the challenges is when we're dealing with groups like this is sometimes it helps us to know the area that they're going to and where they're going to be operating in so that we can look at that area, look at how we can best interdict in that area. And if we interrupt that, sometimes they will go to an area that we're not prepared for and that it might, I guess the best way is throw us off our game, if that makes any sense at all. You know, we look at these tactically as to how do we approach it based on what we expect. And so if we can keep them in an area, we will try to keep them in an area as opposed to possibly pushing them out into an area that we're not expecting and then have to adjust to that. And I know that might sound a little odd, but tactically that makes it better for us.
A question that we get a lot, and I think you will, one of you had discussed this earlier, but I think it's worth if we could revisit the idea that this group, if I'm understanding correctly, they are autonomous. They do not apply for a permit of any sort. Is that correct? Okay.
Correct.
So there is no permit process for these folks. And by them assembling in and of itself gathering together. For instance, at Fields Park, they were out there for an hour, literally just talking, smoking, doing nothing. You would not be able to come into the park and do anything about that. Is that correct?
That is correct. You know, one of the challenges, I don't want to say challenges, because of where we live, we have a country that has laws, and the Constitution gives us protections. Those protections are important for all of us. And so we have to apply and look at those. How do we apply those evenly and fairly? And so we are looking for criminal conduct. Even though I might think that this group is gathering to cause criminal conduct, it makes it extremely difficult for me to be able to go in there without reasonable suspicion or probable cause. I mean, I can go in and interact with that group, but I can't disrupt it or try to what would be called interfering with their First Amendment to be able to have the freedom to gather, if that makes any sense, if I'm explaining myself correctly.
So as far as this group goes, and I think for everyone in attendance tonight, I think it's helpful because I hear versions of this question a lot. This is not a group, as you said earlier, that is protesting a social injustice, an issue. These folks do not have demands or demands that can be met in any way, right? They want the elimination of jails, the elimination of government, and things like that. So there is no, am I correct in assuming there is no negotiating with them? There's nothing like that police or anybody else can do. Would that be a fair assessment?
So we try to reach out to all groups and communicate with all groups using a liaison officer to try to establish communication so that we better understand what their objectives are, and so that we can, better understand where they're going or what their purpose is, so that we can try to facilitate that. You are correct in saying that this group does not want to communicate with us and won't communicate with us for that purpose.
Okay. And again, you alluded to this earlier, Stan did, and Deputy Ed Davis did. People being here tonight is great, and their involvement and watching, but it's the budget process, is that correct? Where our voices can have perhaps the most impact. And if that is correct, can you again remind everybody where their voices would be needed? What type of, what is the budget process? When do you need people? And how's the best way to do it?
So the budget process is underway. The next step is where bureaus will present their requested budgets and just budget information to council. And then, council will deliberate and decide whether to either approve the mayor's proposed budget or make amendments. There is, and I apologize, I don't have all the dates for these things, but there is certainly ample opportunity for public comment at the city council's budget. There are public hearings about the budget. And so I would encourage you to be part of that process. This has all gone virtual like this since COVID. And so you can usually do it from your living room like you're doing tonight. City council will hear from someone about the budget, whether you are there or not. And so if you want your voice to be heard, I would encourage you to show up and let them know what your priorities are for public dollars. I do want to, I want to be fair to the discussion about the budget, that the city is in real budget difficulty right now in every city bureau. I had the opportunity to listen to sort of the rough drafts of a couple bureau directors' budget presentations today, and it's grim across the board. But for us in the police bureau, the really big challenge with resources is that we have not had a lot of years where there's really been significant adds to our budget. The most recent year was, I think it was the 2018-19 budget year, where we had 56 new positions added. those got cut right back out of the budget last year in about a $13 million or $12 million budget reduction just in the budget process, and then another $13 million that was not related to revenue losses so much as something else. And so, but council needs to hear from you because they're your elected representatives and they want to hear from you. And they'll listen to the people who are doing the talking. And so that's for the budget process, that's the best place to get involved is to comment to council. Certainly emails, phone calls help too, but that public testimony at the public budget hearings really helps them understand where your priorities are.
I just want to, excuse me, I just want to add to that conversation and to remind everyone, it's not just the city. The county plays a major role in this as well. That's where the criminal justice system lies. That's where the district attorney's office is. We have to advocate at that level as well for adequate funding for the district attorney's office, the courts, jail beds, and so on. Not that we're looking to mass incarcerate. I don't think that's what we want to do, but we do have to hold people accountable. The district attorney's office some 20 years ago had 100 prosecutors. The budget has been lessened over the years to today. I believe there's somewhere under 70. So there aren't even enough prosecutors to prosecute if the police brings it to them. And then there's the question of the jail beds. So again, this is not just a city issue. This is city and county, and sometimes we forget about the county's role in this.
Couple of follow-up questions with some detail or some specifics, and I'll just put this to Craig or to Chris or to Jake. If someone tapes over their license plate, as we did see on the 27th, at least at that event, is that an infraction? Is that in and of itself something that should be reported or?
So that we've gone after those folks when we have the resources and we're set up to do so. We will go after those folks that don't have plates on their car and cite as many of those individuals as possible.
Okay.
You know, that was a great point earlier about the county piece. You know, we're only one piece of basically three pieces. The jail piece is a piece of this challenge, and under COVID, they're limiting who goes to jail. The DA is a piece of this, and they are, you know, based on their budget, limiting the type of charges that they're gonna pursue. And so you are correct. You know, we have the ability to go out and arrest every individual out there if we have probable cause for the crime that they're committing. The challenge being that, you know, due to COVID, we might have to give them a citation and let them go. They won't go to jail for that crime. They will go. They will receive a citation, and then if it's a citation, you know, if it's a crime that's low enough on the DA's list due to budget issues, those won't even be prosecuted. And so that's another challenging piece that we face in this whole thing. Is we're focused on those charges and those people who we can hold accountable and know that they will face some consequence to this.
During the protests of the summer that we saw quite a heavy response, and some would say militarized type of response. We saw it multiple times throughout the summer. We saw none of that here in the Pearl District. We've seen none of it in recent events. Is there a reason? Is it the type of protest? Are you more concerned about the BLM protests than you were the anarchists? Can you speak to that?
So I can tell you that the majority of the BLM protests that we had were peaceful, and that we didn't even need to assign police officers to those events. Those happened early in the summer. They slowly died off. They were early on. We had literally thousands of people marching in the street peacefully, and we had no issues with those individuals. As to the later groups I guess I would need a definition of militarization and what you mean by that. We have taken several different approaches in looking at how to deal with this crowd at different times. Like the chief said, we have faced the group basically prodding us into a fight with them. And there's been a couple of nights where it was a full-on street brawl. I mean, they fought with us, and for a period of time, we were losing 1 or 2 officers a night to injuries, where they would be taken off because of broken arms, because of sprains, because of various reasons. And so we have changed up our tactics on a number of occasions. There's a couple of reasons for that. Without sharing all of my secrets, if they get used to a pattern of how we deal with them, then they know how to react to us. And what we've seen over the summer is when we're in constant contact with a group such as this, they will adapt and evolve their tactics so that we're constantly having to look at how do we deal with them. And it becomes extremely challenging, as well as some of the, the tools and stuff with some of the lawsuits that we've faced, and we have temporary restraining orders against us. That has also limited our ability to use some of the tools and tactics. And so we've had to adapt throughout this, and worked on it.
So if I can just, as a follow-up on that, Commander Dobson, by militarized response, and I may be using the wrong vernacular, but the officers arm in arm, shields up, going forward as a line, the types of huge military type vehicles that we saw down by the federal building. Again, we saw none of that here in the Pearl District, and I just want to confirm that that sheer number of officers, A, was affected by shootings, as you've said, but B, had there not been shootings that night, we still, it doesn't sound like, would have seen that sort of response to this anarchist group. Is that correct? Or is that a fair assumption?
So we do have to bifurcate this, because you had, there's us, and then there was the federal officers that were down here as well. And so many of the times that you saw people with shields, we don't carry shields. And so if there were shields out there, that would have been federal officers.
Okay.
The type of vehicles that we use, we have some vans with running boards on them. I think you saw them a couple of weeks ago. That's about the most armored vehicle that we might have, unless we bring in a SWAT vehicle because we were worried about some other concerns. But we don't have armored vehicles per se. And so a lot of what you saw in and around the courthouse was federal officers, and it was not us that were dealing with the crowds directly because of their attacks on the federal courthouse.
And so this not being federal property obviously doesn't, even though there is Homeland Security down the street, Homeland Office. Is there, and this is a question that's come up in several ways tonight in the group chat here, is there a point at which we do ask for the state assistance or government federal assistance if this is going to be happening repeatedly, especially with the destruction?
We are already having those discussions of, the long term and how do we sustain this if this group is going to continue this going into the summer. And clearly we will be reaching out to both our state and local authorities to ask what kind of assistance we can get from them. Again, it's where we do a threat assessment for each event. And so if something we can see is coming that has steam to it, we will reach out to our partners and ask for extra resources.
Is this type of activity that we see, is this what you would refer to as domestic terrorism?
I would
normal.
I would not. I would not, and here's why. These groups have been pretty careful to cap the violence towards other people at a certain level. And yes, we've had a lot of police officers injured, but domestic terrorism to us in the police profession involves more targeted attempt to more deadly violence, I would say. So I would stop short of calling it domestic terrorism. I think that's an overuse of the word terrorism.
Okay, fair enough. Another question that I think a lot of people have, let's fast forward to tomorrow night, and you're on the street or you're in your unit and you see destruction. You know officers are here. You know you folks are here. I see someone break a window at a store. Do I call 911? Or do I assume that you're already here and you don't need to bear down on 911 if I see the crime happening?
It would not hurt to call 911. If you have a good description of someone, that's always helpful for us, because, for example, if they're, and typically this is why they all wear the same clothing, is so that we can't identify them. But if for whatever reason they have something that identifies them and makes them different than others, that helps us narrow down and be able to start looking for that individual. So yes, if you've got something going on and you've got a good description, absolutely, please let us know.
By calling 911.
Correct.
Okay. A question too that somebody's posed is, we're talking about a reactive stance to things that are going on. Is there anything that the city department, the police department is leading into discussions as to what's the bigger issues behind this unrest among these groups? Is that something that you folks are involved in, or who would be in the city to try to, again, we've already stated that they don't have a set of demands, but is there anything that can be done?
This group really, there are underlying causes of some of the protest movement that we've seen, the legitimate protest movement, I would say, and there's a lot of work being done to address the issues that gave rise to those protests, and justifiably so. I mean, you may have heard me say publicly, as I have, that there's a crisis of confidence in policing these days, and we recognize that. We try to be, the best agency we can be here in Portland, and we feel like we've made a lot of progress, but there's a lot of progress to be made. And so, for the real issues that people are protesting about, there's all kinds of things going on that at a lot of different levels to address some of those systemic issues that we need to address. And I will be unashamed about saying that as a leader in policing. But for this group of people that feels entitled to come out in our streets night after night and do nothing but property damage and threaten people and commit criminal activity and attack our police officers, that's something totally else. And really, to us, the solution to that looks like accountability for those actions for anyone who goes out and commits violence and crime in our community. And there's some discussion about what accountability looks like. If you spray paint graffiti on someone's building, do you spend time in jail, or do you spend a couple of days cleaning up graffiti? Because I got a lot of graffiti in this town that needs cleaned up. And are there restorative ways for people to be held accountable for some of the actions that we see? But our strategy has two prongs. There's the operational one that Commander Dobson does pretty well, given what we have to work with, and that's in the moment when the event is happening, to try and prevent damage and certainly try and prevent threats to people's safety. But then outside of that, there's a whole investigative piece, and we've made a number of cases after the fact through a variety of investigative means, and frankly, thanks to some really good detective work by some of our police officers and detectives. And so the third piece to this is where we need your help to the solution. And that is a consistent message from our community that behavior like this is not okay, that this is not consistent with our values in Portland, because it's not. I've lived here a long time, and this is not Portland to tolerate this kind of thing. And we need to hear that from our community, and we need to hear that from our local elected officials, and we have, to some degree. Certainly, I think the mayor has been pretty clear with that message. But and I said that, there was another event earlier where I was talking about gun violence. I'm going to say the same thing about this problem that I said about gun violence. public safety is a shared responsibility. And one of the things that I think has emboldened this group is that, you know, especially for a lot of the summer, we have not heard really strong calls from our community for this to stop. And again, that recognition that this is not consistent with our community's values by any stretch of the imagination. And so, you know, there are lots of ways for people to organize and to send that message. And that's where I could use your help in this problem, is in making your voice heard, that this isn't okay with us.
As a follow-up on that, what does that look like for residents, for citizens, not just here in the Pearl District, of course, the entire city? What does that look like? Like us on a corner with signs, or yeah?
Sometimes, you know, you have the right to do that too. Again, for your safety, don't go get in a confrontation, because I don't want people to get hurt. But, you know, for a while we did see some other activity that, you know, and it doesn't look like, you know, there are some groups on the other political extreme that have thought that they should take it upon themselves to come solve our problem for us. That's not what I'm talking about. But, you know, I can think of lots of ideas. You know, are there signs you can put in your windows? Of course, windows can get broken, but, you know, is there ad space that you can take out somewhere to send that message? Again, you know, I think your elected officials like to hear those kind of things from you about what your priorities and your feelings are about this activity, and you know, any input you have for them in their decision making about this kind of activity. Yeah, you know, I think a press statement from your group, or, you know, all kinds of things like that. But I think the more we start to be consistent as a community about our message, that this is not okay and this is not connected to any kind of social justice movement. You know, and if you listen to the people in the social justice movements, I hear a lot of them saying that, hey, this actually is not helping because it's distracting a lot of attention from things that we should be spending our energy on right now. You know, that's a powerful message.
Chief, I beg to differ a little bit. I think I hear lots of people speaking up. I mean, we're speaking up here tonight, of course, but I've heard a lot of people speaking up across the city. But I think the frustration is we're speaking up and we're talking to our political leaders, but what are our political leaders doing about it? There is a sense, sadly, that nothing is being done. So yes, we speak up, but there's a sense that we're not really seeing action, and that's the frustration. I don't know what else we can do. We need the city leaders, county leaders. They have to provide the policies, the actions, the orders, the decisions that are necessary.
Yeah, I'm not going to presume to speak for our political leaders.
I
all I can
understand
do
that.
from my perspective is tell you that I certainly hear you, and you've got my commitment, and I know you got the commitment of our team to do whatever we can with the resources we have to try and make this better.
And I want to be very clear. This is not just about the Pearl District. We had the misfortune of being hit 2 weeks ago. We were also hit a couple of other times at the mayor's residence, and another time, actually a couple of times over there. So this is not just about us. We tend to be very vocal here. But I think there's a lot of, I hear it from a lot of people across the rest of the city. So again, it's not just us. This is a citywide issue. It's not just a Pearl issue.
Stan, and I think we've covered in one way or another most of the questions. There's one last one, if I can ask. Is there, and forgive me if you mentioned this earlier, when we were having some technical issues, I had to take my eye off the ball. Curfews. If this situation were to get worse and so on, would a curfew be possibly used, and is that indeed helpful with groups like this?
You want
Go
to take
ahead,
that?
Craig.
Or me?
Well,
So
what I would-
curfews? No, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, you'd think this far into a life of Zoom meetings, we'd be smoother. I apologize, Craig. All I was going to say is a curfew has to be enacted by order of the mayor. And we did that at one point early on in the troubles last summer. And Craig can talk about what enforcing that curfew looks like. But there's also the question of, is it possible to narrowly tailor that curfew to a specific area? Because, while this activity happens night after night, and there are a number of neighborhoods that have been affected by it in the aggregate, it's only in one small place. And do you enact a curfew for the entire city of Portland to deal with something in one small place? But go ahead, Craig.
So one of the challenges, again, as we go back to talking about resources and funding, is a curfew could be effective if it's set right and you're dealing with a small group of people. Again, like I mentioned earlier, where we're at right now, a curfew would fall so low on the totem pole of crimes. It's a violation, or even a city crime. It's not even a state crime, that it probably wouldn't be prosecuted. Now, would it allow me to stop people? Yes, it would allow me to stop people. But the effectiveness of it, the accountability part of it probably isn't there. And so that's the challenge, is the holding people accountable for those actions. And that's the challenge. If I can go back, the frustration piece, the challenge with us living in a democratic society is it requires action. And so we have representatives who represent us, and we elect those people, but it requires us to have interaction with them and vote for those people and make sure that we get our voice heard. And that can be either through interaction, through direct interaction with them, through phone calls and emails. But it also, when it's time to elect people, that's where we have the power as the people to vote and use our constitutional rights to be able to do that. And so I would encourage you to be active in your constitutional rights so that you are heard.
I appreciate that. And one last question, and I don't know if you can answer this or we'll need to investigate it. Do you know of any groups that are supporting small business if they have damage, a fund or anything like that that's been organized by anything citywide? I don't know if you folks have seen anything.
Robert King might have some information on that.
Okay, and he's logged off. So
Robert had to step off for another
right.
meeting.
I'll
so I don't
follow
think
up
he's
with
here
him.
anymore.
For the person that asked that question, I will follow up with Robert King and see if there's an answer for that. But I think we've covered everything.
There was a response to that, Bill, from Mark Wells from Clean and Safe, that Rose City Collective has a fund.
Great. I will share that out.
Thank you, Mark.
Can I couch one more thing kind of to help build the perspective? Because I read some of the chat, and I understand people are frustrated. We're frustrated with certain elements of this as well. One of the challenges we have is because of who we are and the profession we are, we have to follow the rules. And rules are set for us to keep us in line so that we can, you can stay safe and that we don't abuse those rules. One of the challenges we have is this group doesn't play by the rules. There are no rules that they have to play by. And so the challenge is that they will use and go about things to make things difficult for us. And so they will, go out and physically do things, but they'll also use lawsuits against us and other tools. They'll use all tools against to try to limit our ability to be effective. This group that we're dealing with on a regular basis is anarchist based. they're based on a philosophy of they don't want the government around. And so that's their purpose. Their purpose is to try to cause the downfall of the government, so that they can build their own ideology, if you will. And so that's one of the challenges that we face is sometimes, you know, we have to play by the rules and they don't. And it's sometimes hard to explain that piece.
And I think it's worth noting, and correct me if I'm wrong, you know, this is an international movement. It isn't just in Portland. It isn't just in America. I mean, it's in Greece right now. You're seeing it in Myanmar. You're seeing it worldwide. They're connected socially, if not physically. And that's what we're seeing an arm of that here. But other cities are experiencing this as well.
No, you're exactly right. And one of the things is that, you know, most of these folks are young, they're intelligent, they're savvy, they know how to use the internet. And so you can look at some of their websites and they study tactics from throughout the country with each other, their own tactics as well as police tactics. And so a lot of what you saw early on in the summer, a lot of what the tactics they started using came from the Hong Kong protests, because they were so effective there. And so they mimicked those. And then as we adapted to those, they moved on and worked on other tactics. And so it's this constant of evolution where they are savvy. They're looking at how do we be most effective at thwarting the police, and are constantly interacting with people throughout the world in those conversations. And so it's a challenge.
Most definitely. Well, Stan, I think we have covered the questions that have been asked and posed. So I will turn this back over to you, and you're muted.
You think I would have learned by now too. I don't see any more questions. If anybody has last chance for some questions before we are going to move into a very brief business portion of our meeting after this. So last chance for some questions.
I would like to thank, well, if anybody's thinking, thank everybody for their great questions tonight and working with us on this. And of course, we thank our Portland Police Bureau staff that's here tonight with us. We do appreciate their time.
Yes, I echo that, Bill. Thank you, Chief and Commander and Lieutenant and Robert King, who has left us. We know this is really challenging. We have a lot of frustration. There's a lot of anger out there. I hope that everyone has a better understanding tonight of the challenges that the Police Bureau and the city faces. We're here to support things that will help enhance public safety. And any follow-up questions, comments, you can always go to email us at the Pearl District. All the addresses are in the website, on the website.
Can I did miss one question. I'm sorry, just real quick. As of tonight, how many officers will be in the Pearl District on Friday night?
I don't know if I'm comfortable telling you that.
They may not want to answer that.
I don't want to tip my hand there.
Okay.
Can't give
Yeah.
away everything.
Got it. Well, thank you again.
Okay, well, thanks everyone for being here. Follow up with us with questions, comments, and I just want you to know that as an association, we're trying to do everything we can for livability in our neighborhood and across the city. There's only so much we can do about this public safety end of it, but we try to get the information out there and bring in help to whatever extent we can. So thank you, and anyone is welcome to stay, but we're going to move into just a few housekeeping items and just take a break for just a couple of minutes.
While we're doing that break, I will let everybody know, I will send out a notice tonight. We did not know we had a limit of 100 people. I think that was news certainly news to me, but we will be posting a video of this entire discussion tonight online. And so, just so you know, that will be made available to everybody. And one of the questions that came up a lot in there, and I think we just need to be clear, PDNA is certainly not advocating anyone to put themselves in danger, arming themselves, or anything like that. The number one thing you can do if you see a crime, report a crime, call 911, and let the police handle all of those issues that we see going on.
And I want to apologize to those who couldn't get in, although they can't hear the apology. But again, the 100 limit, our first experience with that. So we'll be better prepared, hopefully, for the future. And hopefully we don't need to have these types of meetings again.
Well, we love having over 100 people at our party here.
Sure.
We want you all. We'll just need to get a bigger room. We'll need to get a bigger house for more people. We want you here every month. And I joke, but honestly, this is, if we're just talking freely here as a group, I mean, this is where your voice is needed here, and then we learn and speak to our elected officials. So, I think there's reason
And
to
just a reminder to those who are here who generally don't attend these meetings, we hold these board meetings the second Thursday of every month at 6 o'clock. There are also our livability and safety committee meetings that are the first Wednesday of every month, and other meetings as well, other committees, planning and transportation, emergency preparation, and so on. So all you have to do is go to pearldistrict.org. There's an awful lot of information there. I will also say, if you are not a member of the association, again, just go to pearldistrict.org. It'll take you about 60 seconds to put your name in. There's no charge to be a member. And if you are a member, you will get all the blasts that go out, all the information that goes out. So we welcome you to join and just be part of the neighborhood. We're all working together to have a better home for everybody. Okay, well, we still have 52 people now. So I'm just going to jump into some housekeeping. So we have the minutes from our February 3rd, February 11th meeting, I think it was. And I'm just going to ask for unanimous consent to approve those minutes. If there are any objections, board members? Okay, those minutes are approved. We're going to dispense with reports, financial report we're dispensing with, other reports, but we do have, to my knowledge, one action item tonight, and that's regarding trash issues in the neighborhood. We have, I think, everybody knows that we have the new trash cans. They're not so new anymore. It's been a couple of years now that we purchased and donated back to the city, and the city is now collecting more than they used to, and so on. But lately, we are having some issues with excess trash that our clean team volunteers, it's just beyond what they're able to clean up. We've had Sally Mize, our trash angel. I think I used the wrong term in another meeting the other day, but we call her our trash angel. She's monitoring trash. She and I had a meeting with the department in the city that is responsible for the street trash. And we're trying to work with them, number one, asking them to provide an additional weekly collection. It used to be 2. When we did the trash can program 2 years ago, we were able to get them to do 4 pickups a week. We desperately feel we need 1 more. And as I refer to our clean teams, we have, I believe it's 40 or between 40 and 50 volunteers who go out into the 7 districts, 7 zones that we designated in the neighborhood to pick up litter, not trash so much as litter. And the problem right now is there's some excess trash that's beyond the capability of our volunteers to pick up. So while we are waiting the city to provide that service to us, which we are told there's going to be funding for greater cleanups around the city, we're still waiting. In the meantime, we have to deal with the excess trash that is more around the perimeters of the Pearl, not so much in the heart of the Pearl. So we, and this is the action item I'm coming to, we have spoken to a private company who on 24-hour notice will go out and pick up that trash for us at a pretty reasonable price. What I'm asking for is for this board to approve not to exceed $2,500 for us to be able to do that, have this company go out and pick up this trash, which would be for an interim, what we're looking at interim until the city steps up, and hopefully it will, for approximately 3 months. So that's what I'm asking the board to approve, and I would certainly call for discussion on that and ask for a motion and hope to get that approved. So Linda, and then Patricia.
I think that this sounds like a super wonderful initiative. I wanted to ask if you have considered adding to the trash pickup duty of this special group, also the wayward grocery carts.
Well, that's an interesting question. I'll turn that over to Judy, but I remember there's a special number you call for the carts.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work.
Doesn't work anywhere? Oh,
Doesn't work, no.
like other things that don't work, huh? Because there used to
Yeah.
be, and I know with Foot Patrol, we saw the
I've
cart.
called it many times. It doesn't work. And the grocery stores themselves, Stan, won't pick up the carts either, because for insurance reasons, they won't pick up the carts.
Judy, do you have any thoughts or ideas on that?
Well, I would defer to the trash angel that's been most pressing for getting this done. And rather than complicating it right now, I want to move forward with appropriating funds to get these pickups done. This is, I think, the immediate need right now. I'd almost like to have more discussions at a later time about adding the carts in.
Yeah, because if you're going to be doing big items like Sally has told me, discarded pallets, excess large trash that's left next to trash cans, maybe in the future you could consider also picking up the carts because they fall into that same category.
Stan, in executive committee, we discussed some questions. You were going to get some more information on pricing. What you were saying a figure
Yes.
of roughly $175. And our questions were revolving around: is that like one item they pick up, or the whole district, or?
Yes,
I
let me
think-
elaborate, let me clarify. So it's $177.50 when we call them out. That represents 2.5 hours of labor and a small dump fee. And I think nobody knows for sure how this is going to work out. We don't know. There may be times that they go out to one spot and takes them an hour to clean up. And then we may find another day or another week, there's a spot where it's going to take 2 hours to clean up. So this is really kind of a budget. We're going to have to see. I think there may be some trial and error associated with it, but I think until we try it, we're not really going to know. And we're not committed to anything. I mean, if we go 2 weeks into this and we find it's not working, well, then we can punt and try and figure out something else. But I think, and I'm asking for, it really amounts, if Sally and I were just estimating 1 pickup a week, but it could be 2 pickups 1 week, no pickups another week, 3 pickups another, we don't know. So if we did 1 pickup a week for 3 months, it would be about $2,100. I'm asking for $2,500 on a not to exceed to give us a little wiggle room. So again, we just don't know for sure.
I'd like to make a motion that we appropriate $2,500 for the next 3 months to pick up the excessive trash until we can get, until such time that we get some aid from the city.
Do I hear a second? Patricia, is that a second on your part?
I'll
Patricia,
second that.
mute, Patricia, you have to mute.
And just one clarification,
We're not saying we're going to spend that. We're just authorizing if we need
No,
to
no,
use
I'm
that.
not, I'm not objecting to the funding. The problem is that the more that we undertake, which in normal cities are undertaken by cities, the more the city relies on us to take on these civic duties. And I am not in opposition to seconding the motion for the money, provided there's a real push to the city government to do these tasks, because, you know, they consider us a rich community that can take on all of these responsibilities. The next thing, and I'm not in opposition to this at all, as a matter of fact, I'm in support of it, that we may end up having to have a private security company in the Pearl if the police doesn't end up doing their job. So these are expenses that in normal cities are undertaken from your taxpayer dollars. I'm happy to second the motion, but I just want to bring that to everybody's attention. It's a slippery slope. Once you start, you know, doing all of these things that normally are part of a civic, the municipal budget, then it's just a slippery slope. So that's, I'm happy to be seconding the motion.
Well, before I call for the vote, Patricia, I cannot disagree with that. Unfortunately, that's the state of the city. There's much we have to take on that the city should be taking on. And we run that risk of the city, could say, taking advantage of us. But in the meantime, we need to have a clean and livable neighborhood. So we have to do whatever we can do. And we keep, trust me, we advocate with the city all the time. And on this trash, we talk to them every week, if not more. So we're doing what we can. So,
But Stan, there's a positive side here, which is anyone who's lived here long enough and been a part of this organization remembers when we actually bought a bunch of used cans from, was it Seattle Seahawks or up in Washington? And we had, it's a bake sale. We had local businesses and buildings sponsoring trash pickup. The city did nothing. So in terms of what the city does now versus when it used to do nothing. It's the tireless work of this organization working with government to make things better. So I just want to make sure we're clear on that. It's not like everything's getting worse and the city's not doing anything. We certainly do more than we think we have to, but there's a positive history to this. They used to do nothing. Now they just pick up 4 times a week, right, Stan?
it's 4 times, yeah. And to that point, just to elaborate on that a bit, there was a time when, to David's point, we had to take care of trash cans totally. We had to purchase them. We had to pay for the collections. We had to pay for the maintenance of the cans. When those old ugly concrete cans, when the cover, the metal cover would get into would be in the street and run over by a truck, we had to replace it. And it became unsustainable for us. So we did go to the city and we said, hey, city, we're volunteers. We can't do this anymore. And it wasn't just us. There were 6 other neighborhoods at the time that had the same situation. We advocated and the city ultimately agreed. Then we went to the next step to change over the trash cans to what we have today. So with that, thanks.
Mary has her hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, David took the words right out of my brain. I was thinking exactly the same thing, that we need to acknowledge that essentially what we did is we started a program and we funded it and we kept it going. And then we went to the city and we got the city to take it over. And I think that's one of the things, if we want the city to do something on a larger scale, I think it's beneficial for us to establish a program, have it up and running, and then go to them and say, hey, you know, all you have to do is just step in and do this. We've done all the work for you. So I fully support this, and that's all I want to say.
And
Thanks,
Linda
Mary.
Witt.
Can
Yeah.
I
Linda Witt.
say one more?
Linda
May
Witt
I
has
give
her hand
one
raised.
more inside perspective? There are 46 members on the clean team, and people spend hours picking up the trash and the litter because it's more than litter now. And people are giving up because we can't keep up with it. We need this help. And it's been very much increased during COVID and the protests / riots that we've had. So we need this help. We're not asking for it. because we're not doing our share. And I know the concern about the city not doing their job, but people are complaining about the trash. So it's a balancing act right now.
Linda Wood has her hand raised. She's had her hand raised.
Okay, thanks. So I do have a question. I am on a clean team. I lead a team that meets every Saturday and has, sometimes 10 to 12 people,
The
including
best clean team.
the best clean team.
Let's just
yes,
say
yes.
it. We're the
And
best.
we do, we do, thank you, Bill. We do have, we do encounter, kind of large, things of trash. And very often what we do is we call Metro. So isn't it Metro's job to come out and pick up? And they do, Judy, they do come out. So are we taking over Metro's job too here?
Well, that's the RI, the RID program, which I think it's specific to, let's say, there's a mattress on the streets, and they will pick that up. But I don't think they will do that at any kind of a regular basis. Sally, did you want to speak to that? You may know more.
I agree with Linda to some extent, and yes, RID is used, and we use many of the city services through PDX Reporter. The problem that happens is that because they are overloaded and it is an explosive, trash is an epidemic right now. There's more than ever, and that's okay. We keep growing with it. But the other problem is that in certain situations, because they're so backed up and it takes longer than it used to for cleanups, let's say, and they're more, that's because a lot of times they have to do an assessment if there's a camper there or whatever to make sure that we're not taking their belongings. It's just backed up because it's more complicated due to many reasons. But if we don't get rid of it and do it quickly, it gets broken into either by rats, and rats will, and vermin are attracted to the raw food, for instance, even through a plastic bag. If we don't report it, get it bagged with what we can do, and wrap it up and get it to the dump. That's the piece that we're after, is getting somebody to come and get it before it gets splashed out. Campers fight each other at night. They tear each other's tents up. People are hungry for food. They'll tear all the bags apart. The crows tear it apart. The rats tear it apart. And so you go back and do it 3 times. I guess it's ridiculous. It all needs to happen in one day. That's all.
Idea. Yeah, thanks, Sally.
So, and I think we should keep the carts and store them because we can use them.
Oh, can you?
Nobody else is.
True. Linda, one more thing that you said about security. If you recall, at our last meeting, we created an ad hoc committee to look into security, and we would have had a very small report on that tonight, if not for the length of this meeting. So I think we'll have a greater conversation on that next month. Just so you know, John Hollister and David Dicer are meeting with private security companies to assess the possibility of private security. And we have no idea where that's going to go. It's a big topic. So with that, I would like to call for a vote. We have a motion, we have a second. I'd like to call for a vote, and I'm going to call for it backwards since it's easier that way on Zoom. Do we have any opposed? Please raise your hand. Okay. I see 1 opposed. Okay, Bill, please watch with me. I'm not so adept at watching these screens. Okay, any abstentions? Okay, therefore the motion is passed. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate that. I'm going to take a moment. John Hollister, are you still here? John is not here. John, I think, is taking a nap. Okay, so we're not going to do gift card winners tonight. We'll pick it up again next month. Okay, I'm going to ask any committee if there's anything pressing, anything that requires action. Keeping an eye on the clock. There's nothing that can't wait till next month.
I'm going to throw something out.
I'm sorry, Bill?
It's not my committee, but e-recycling starts in all buildings. One building's already started, unbeknownst to me. Turns out they've taken the avenue is off and running. Their bin is halfway full already. But anyway, so tomorrow a lot of the buildings get their recycling bins. Please make sure your residents know about it, your neighbors. Get those bins filled and try to beat the Encore this year.
And how many buildings did we have? About 30
27 buildings.
Great, great.
Can I ask
Patricia.
one question about the recycling? Does this mean it all gets recycled as used metal, or does it get repurposed if they're coffee makers you're not using, or waffle irons, or whatever things you want to give away? What happens to the recycling goods?
Without just keeping it high, very high level. If it's still working, then it gets either sold or routed to an organization that can take them. If it is not working, then it is scrapped for the metal and recycled properly per state guidelines.
So do we have separate bins that will?
No. You put it all in one bin. You just throw it all in there,
Okay.
and they take care of everything.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any
Thanks for
other?
bringing that up, Bill. I just want to add one thing, that Bill has taken the lead on this project and he's done a beautiful job. It keeps growing, and thanks so much.
Oh, my pleasure.
Okay, anything anybody else has? Committee members, good of the order, public comment? Anybody
Stan,
like to chime in with it?
Oh, go ahead.
Meza, I think that was you.
Yeah, Stan, I'd like to bring up a proposed use that's come up recently. To those who are not aware, there's a Porsche dealership that is being proposed at the corner of 15th and Johnson. We are going to be discussing this at our next meeting on this coming Tuesday. It's a type 2 review, so it's not typical for us to weigh in on these sort of things, but with it right on Johnson next to the Greenway, we have some concerns about traffic and safety. So we're going to have that discussion. I encourage anybody else who's interested in discussing that, please join us, because we need to submit testimony by next Thursday, is the city's deadline. And we're in touch with the applicant as well. So we're trying to get more information about what the proposed uses are on the site. It's not your typical dealership. It's meant to be more like an urban format. It's a kind of new concept that they're testing out, much like what Tesla is doing. It's going to be a showroom and an apparel shop, and there will be test drives allowed as well. So we're just trying to get more information from the applicant, but it should be an interesting discussion on Tuesday.
And we're
Yes,
looking into
I love the bridge behind you.
and we're looking at potentially a good neighbor agreement with them to make sure the Greenway is respected. So we're looking into that as well. So.
Okay. All right, I'm looking for any other hands.
I'll make
Mary?
one more plug. I'm just
Wait, we got Mary. We got Mary.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Mary.
I just wanted to real quickly say that I've been concerned about the senior housing project that's going up right behind the Vista, between the Vista and the Bridge Housing, Abigail. And I found out just this week that Walsh Construction, they're starting to stage there. And so it looks like they're going to be breaking ground pretty soon. And I've confirmed that they are not going to use the impact hammer pile driver. So there's one more project where we influence the developer and the construction company not to use that. And hopefully the Fremont will be done soon, but it's pretty loud.
Well,
So
at least they tried, Mary.
Yeah, they did. You know,
They ran into a situation.
Yeah, that's the thing that I really feel, again, that we really had a strong influence because they tried the auger drill. The other thing, I talked to Jim Brunkhorst at Pacific Foundation, and he told me that they're actually using two things. They're using the vibratory hammer or the vibratory before they go to the impact hammer to try and lessen it. And so they vibrate it as far as they can, and then they start pounding it in. So yeah, you know, the fact that they didn't just jump to the impact hammer and they did everything they could to mitigate the noise. Well, unfortunately, they could do things to mitigate the noise if our proposal to amend the noise code been presented to city council. We could have some sound barriers and some other things, but
Barry, I know it's out of your purview as a noise committee, but I thought the other issue that was raised regarding the light pollution that's coming from that was interesting. Is there anything that can be done to mitigate that?
you know, it's really interesting. We had a situation a couple of years ago here in the Sitka where a building installed a bunch of lights because of theft, and they were literally shining into all of the bedroom windows on one side of our building. And once again, because we're zoned industrial, it didn't exceed the code. We were fortunate in that we were able to work with the management of the building, and they put covers over it to deflect the light. With this particular situation with the floodlights at the Fremont, we're trying to just work with the construction, work with Anderson to see if there's something that they can do. You know, they don't need to have that light on 24/7. They could put, if they're concerned about theft, they could do it at the ground level. So, but yeah, it's really tough to get any code enforcement because it just doesn't exceed the limit.
For those unaware, that the tower at that site is putting out what has to be a zillion candle lights. It lights up the entire block and even our building here, it gets it. So we can communicate back to that resident that asked us about that. I know.
Oh, I've been in
you're
contact with her.
You're in touch with her, I know.
Yeah, I actually had several conversations and email exchanges with her.
Great. The plug I was going to make, if I may, is for John Warner, actually, and the water storage campaign they have going on. John, do you want to give a plug for yourself?
Thank you. John is very modest.
He's very modest.
Appreciate being encouraged to make a plug. So if you haven't heard already, PD&A's Emergency Preparedness Committee has identified that in a major earthquake, we could have less than 2 days of water available to drink in the neighborhood, which could be a real problem. So we've come up with a solution and an easy button to address it. We have a campaign to purchase at a substantial discount 3-gallon durable plastic water containers, which are designed for emergency water storage. So please talk to the EPREP committee in your building or reach out to me through our Pearl District EPREP webpage. There's a contact email in there. So if you need help finding someone in your community that's involved in this initiative in your building, who's organizing it in your building, reach out to them, or if you can't find them, reach out to me. We'd love to have you join. We know that we've got probably at least 1,000 of these bottles that have been ordered so far by residents in the neighborhood, but we need more than that to really take the edge off of this potential water shortage in a disaster. So do your part, look into it. They're not expensive. They're $18 per bottle, 3-gallon bottle. You can store water in them indefinitely, really. So check it out. The Pearl District webpage, website has got a promotional about this. So just check out Bill's handiwork and reach out to me if you need any additional information.
Thanks, John. Judy?
Just 2 quick statements. I want to talk about the crossover with the Downtown Association. Sally and I walked today with their inaugural walk. They're called the Help Team. It's a combination of the Foot Patrol and Clean Team, but it was really great to be supportive in their endeavor. It's a big step for them. And then I was a part of the PSAC, Public Safety Action Coalition, with the other area neighborhood livability and safety chairs. And it's really great to see this connection that's happening within the city. I think it's important steps that we're taking now to broaden our efforts.
And to add to that, Judy, PSAC is looking to host a graffiti cleanup. That would be a collaboration between at least 5 neighborhoods, maybe 6, maybe 7, certainly the downtown core neighborhoods. and we're looking to coordinate that with Earth Day. And we are having a coordination as well with the city. Sam Adams, who you all know is working in the mayor's office, he's been tasked with helping to clean up the city, and graffiti is part of that. So look for more on that in the coming weeks. Sally?
Something a little further on that, I believe it may be the same thing, or in addition is it's the 18th, so it's next week. Solve is doing another sweep with downtown that I believe is part of that. And there are several start points, but you have to go online and register. It's a great group, and many neighborhoods, downtown neighborhoods, will be represented.
I think there was one yesterday too, Sally. So
Right.
that's part of the overall plan to clean up the city, especially the downtown core. Okay, I'm looking for.
I think you're good.
That's it. Anybody else with anything? Okay. Well, thanks, everyone. Longer meeting than usual, but I hope it was productive and useful for everyone. And next month's meeting, I moved our presentation for Home Share Oregon will be next month instead. That's it.
Great.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
See you all.
Take care.
Take care. Be safe.
Bye.
Bye. Good night.